It's very possible that you already have your opinion about who would win, and it's very possible that your opinion is different from mine, so I just ask that you watch the video and understand my arguments, okay? So guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon who compares the most Jujutsu Kaisen characters on YouTube, and you're on my channel. Everyone knows that Rika is one of the most powerful cursed spirits shown so far in Jujutsu, but after Mahoraga's fight against Sukuna, many have been wondering if in a fight, Mahoraga could beat Rika. Let's try to understand some things first, to be able to define who win. Rika is known as the Queen of Courses, and has such a large amount of cursed energy that it is almost infinite. In addition, she has the ability, which in my opinion is extremely powerful, to copy the powers of her opponents. Furthermore, Rika can also physically fight against her opponents, together with Yuta, as we saw in the fight against Geto, and also alone, as we saw in the fight against Ryu. In this fight, Rika managed to hold a beam of energy with her hand, and land a powerful punch at Ryu, but she was quickly counterattacked, and she was also able to fire a beam of energy, but it was also stopped by Ryu, so we can say it wasn't something that powerful. So we can conclude that fighting alone, Rika is very strong, as she managed to stop an extremely powerful beam with just her hand, which shows us that she is very resistant. But even though she managed to make a very powerful physical attack, the enemy counterattacked very easily, which shows us that Rika does not have such a great fighting skill, her great advantage being her absurd amount of energy. However, the power of her blows is apparently not compatible with the amount of energy she has. And I think that will be decisive in determining who would win. It's one thing if you have a lot of cursed energy, and it's another thing if you can release this energy and use it in battle. For example, you can have a super powerful computer, but if you try to run a game or software that has a bad optimization, your computer won't be able to perform well, even with all this raw power. And I think something similar happens with both Yuta and Rika. They have absurd amounts of energy, but they still can't release that energy to use in an optimized way. A good example of how optimization and use of energy makes a difference is Satoru Gojo himself, who has less cursed energy than Yuta, but cursed technique allows him to use energy with minimal loss, and this mastery of his own energy makes a total difference, as he has much greater energy releases and is able to use the energy he has in a much better way. Now let's talk a little about Mahoraga, a Shikigami known as the Divine General, whose function is to eliminate curses with the use of positive energy, mainly with the use of his sword, known as the Sword of Extermination, and this sword is so powerful that if he had been in his original body, Sukuna would have died upon receiving that first blow, due to the positive energy. But what makes Mahoraga an almost invincible opponent is his ability to adapt to any technique, and Sukuna saw this in practice as Mahoraga adapted to his cutting strikes, until they lost their effectiveness. Mahoraga has what is probably one of the greatest displays of strength in the entire work, which is when he hits Sukuna, and makes him fly on impact, and through 3 buildings, and this means that Mahoraga's energy release is very high. He can use the cursed energy he has very well, and that's why Mahoraga's strike was so effective. So we can conclude that Mahoraga probably has much less cursed energy than Rika, but he can release and use the cursed energy that he has much more than her, and with that we can conclude that Mahoraga has more powerful blows that cause much more damage and is also much faster. Rika is more resistant and has more raw power. But for me, one of the things that can define the fight is Mahoraga's ability to adapt, because as we saw in the fight against Sukuna, when Sukuna decides to use his innate domain, his cleave and dismantle any living moves are unbelievably not effective. And they are unable to defeat Mahoraga, who is already very adapted from previous attacks. And Mahoraga's adaptation not only gives the ability to not die to a blow already suffered, but also makes Mahoraga improve and adapt its combat and evolve in the middle of the fight. Rika doesn't have as great a fighting skill, and she also can't adapt like Mahoraga. She has a lot more cursed energy, but she can't use that energy efficiently, as she clearly has less power in her strikes. Besides Rika, she cannot attack using positive energy like Mahoraga, so I believe that the first blow Mahoraga makes with her sword, Rika would be defeated. But the Monio, what if Rika used her potential, accessing all her power, just like what happened in the movie Jujutsu Kaisen 0? If Rika hit Mahoraga with that beam of energy that she used in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, I believe that Mahoraga could be defeated. But to activate this power, it is likely that Rika would need Yuta as a trigger, and would not be able to use it on her own, and here I am considering a scenario where Yuta would not be present. But Demonio, what if Rika copied Mahoraga's ability to adapt and started adapting too? The problem is that we don't know that Rika gets the copied skills, since all the techniques she copies, she gives to Yuta, and there is no evidence that Rika herself can use the techniques, so in this video I need to consider that she can't use it, and even if she copied the skill and adapted, she doesn't have a good release of power, and she's also not very good at combat, so she would be at a disadvantage in terms of strength, speed, and power, and Mahoraga would still has his sword, which would probably defeat Rika with a single blow, even if she already had the adaptation, since if the blow is very powerful, the adaptation cannot prevent you from dying, since Mahoraga himself died when facing Sukuna. I believe that Rika has the potential to beat Mahoraga, if she could unleash all her power, and also if she could copy the right skills, but the current Rika is at a disadvantage in almost every aspect, and there are few possible scenarios where she would win. But what about you? Do you think that in the right context Rika wins? Leave it in the comments, and if you like the video, subscribe to see the next ones. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.